The arrival. The sleek, silver spacecraft touched down on the outskirts of New Houston, its hull gleaming in the warm Texas sunlight. As the engines powered down, a hiss of equalizing pressure filled the air, and a ramp extended from the ship's belly. One by one, a motley crew of alien exchange students emerged, blinking in the bright sunlight and taking in their first breaths of Earth's atmosphere. Zaxlor, a lanky Arcturian with iridescent scales and 4 arms, was the first to step onto the tarmac. His large, multifaceted eyes darted around, taking in every detail of his new surroundings. Behind him came Gloop, an amorphous blob of a being from the methane swamps of Epsilon Eridani, who oozed down the ramp with a series of wet squelches. "Is it always this bright?" Zaxlor asked, shielding his eyes with 2 of his hands. Gloop burbled in agreement, his gelatinous form quivering slightly in the unfamiliar gravity. The next to disembark was Krillix, an avian creature from the low-gravity world of Avis Prime. Her wings were folded tightly against her body, and she took hesitant steps, clearly struggling with Earth's stronger gravitational pull. "By the cosmic egg," Krillix chirped, her voice strained. "How do humans move in this?" Last to exit the ship was Senthu, a crystalline being from the silicon-based life world of Quartzar. Their faceted body refracted the sunlight, casting miniature rainbows across the tarmac. As the alien students gathered at the base of the ramp, a figure approached from a nearby building. It was a human woman, tall and athletic, with short-cropped hair and a wide smile that somehow managed to look both welcoming and slightly predatory. "Welcome to Earth, kids," she called out, her voice booming across the landing pad. "I'm Coach Samantha Briggs, and I'll be your physical education instructor for the semester." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Physical education hadn't been mentioned in their orientation packets. Coach Briggs continued, either oblivious to or ignoring their apprehension. "Now, I know you're all from different worlds with different gravities, atmospheres, and physical capabilities. But let me tell you something. By the time you finish my class, you'll all be in the best shape of your lives, no matter what shape that might be." Zaxlor raised one of his hands tentatively. "Excuse me, Coach Briggs, but I thought we were here for cultural exchange and academic studies." Briggs' grin widened. "Oh, you'll get plenty of that too. But here on Earth, we believe in a holistic education. Mind, body, and spirit, all working together. And trust me, you'll need all 3 to survive. I mean thrive, in my class." Gloop gurgled something that sounded suspiciously like a whimper. "Now let's get you all settled in your dorms," Briggs said, clapping her hands together. "Classes start bright and early tomorrow morning. Oh, and a word of advice. You might want to start hydrating now. You're gonna need it." As Coach Briggs led them towards the campus, the alien students trailed behind, a mix of excitement and trepidation filling their various alien hearts, or equivalent organs. Krillix leaned towards Zaxlor, her beak clicking nervously. "Did you notice how fit all the humans look?" she whispered. Zaxlor nodded, his scales shifting color slightly in what might have been the Arcturian equivalent of a blush. "I did. Do you think they're all like that?" Senthu chimed in, their crystalline voice tinkling like wind chimes. "I've heard stories about Earth. They say it's a death world, a planet so harsh that it breeds incredibly resilient life forms." Gloop, who had been oozing along silently, suddenly spoke up. "But surely that's just an exaggeration, right? I mean, look at this place. It's green and soft." As if on cue, they passed a group of human students engaged in what appeared to be a casual game of some sort. To the aliens' shock, the humans were hurling themselves at each other with reckless abandon, tackling and grappling in what seemed like a brutal contest. "Oh, don't mind them," Coach Briggs called back, noticing their stunned expressions. "That's just a friendly game of rugby. You'll get to try it out next week." The aliens exchanged horrified glances. What had they gotten themselves into? As they approached the main campus buildings, the full scale of their new home became apparent. Galactic High was a sprawling complex of sleek, modern structures interspersed with lush green spaces. Human students milled about, some lounging on the grass, others jogging along winding paths, and still others engaged in various physical activities that looked equal parts intriguing and terrifying to the new arrivals. Coach Briggs led them to a large dormitory building, its walls adorned with banners proclaiming "Welcome Galactic Exchange Students" and "Go Fighting Earthlings," the latter accompanied by a stylized image of a human punching what appeared to be an asteroid. "This is where you'll be staying," Briggs announced. "You'll each have a human roommate to help you acclimate. Think of it as your own personal cultural liaison." As they entered the building, the aliens were hit with a cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights. Human students bustled about, carrying strange equipment and chattering excitedly. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, some enticing, others less so. Zaxlor sniffed the air, his sensory tendrils quivering. "What is that aroma? It smells energizing." Briggs grinned. "That, my scaled friend, is coffee, Earth's gift to the galaxy. You'll get to know it well during your time here." They stopped in front of a bank of elevators, and Briggs turned to address the group. "All right, kids, here's where I leave you for now. Your room assignments are in your orientation packets. Get settled in, meet your roommates, and try to get some rest. Tomorrow, the real fun begins." As the coach strode away, her muscular frame radiating an aura of barely contained energy, the alien students looked at each other with a mixture of excitement and dread. Krillix ruffled her feathers nervously. Did anyone else notice how she said "fun" like it was a threat? Senthu's crystalline body chimed softly. "Perhaps it's a translation error. Surely, educational activities cannot be that strenuous." Gloop, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I've been analyzing the local data networks. Did you know that humans have something called gym fail compilations? I started watching one, but I had to stop. It was disturbing." Zaxlor patted Gloop consolingly with one of his hands. "Come on, friends. We're here to learn about humanity. This is just part of the experience. How bad could it be?" As they dispersed to find their rooms, none of them noticed the knowing smirks exchanged by passing human students. The aliens were in for a semester they would never forget, if they survived it. In their respective rooms, each alien met their human roommate and began the process of settling in. Zaxlor found himself sharing a room with Mike, a burly young man who seemed to be composed entirely of muscle and enthusiasm. "Dude," Mike exclaimed upon seeing Zaxlor, "you're gonna love it here. Have you ever tried weightlifting? With those 4 arms, you could be a beast in the gym." Zaxlor blinked his multiple eyes in confusion. "Weightlifting? Is that a form of cultural exchange?" Mike laughed, a booming sound that made Zaxlor's scales ripple. "Oh man, you're in for a treat. Just wait till you see what Coach Briggs has in store for you tomorrow." Meanwhile, Krillix was attempting to explain her need for a higher perch to sleep to her roommate, Sarah. "So, you sleep standing up?" Sarah asked, fascinated. "That's so cool. Hey, maybe we can rig up some kind of bar for you. It'll be like having a built-in pull-up station." Krillix wasn't entirely sure what a pull-up was, but something in Sarah's tone made her feathers stand on end. Gloop had perhaps the most unusual rooming situation. His roommate, a laid-back student named Chill, seemed utterly unfazed by sharing space with a sentient blob. "No worries, man," Chill said, watching Gloop ooze into a corner. "Mi casa es su casa. Just, try not to get any slime on my yoga mat, okay?" Senthu found their living arrangements the most challenging. Their crystalline body didn't require sleep in the traditional sense, and they spent most of the night in quiet contemplation, much to the bewilderment of their roommate, a night owl programmer named Aiden. As the night wore on, the alien students tried to rest and prepare for whatever challenges the next day might bring. But sleep proved elusive for most of them. The unfamiliar sounds of Earth, the distant hum of traffic, the chirping of insects, the occasional shout or laugh from other students, kept them on edge. Zaxlor lay awake, staring at the ceiling with all four of his eyes. What had he gotten himself into? He had come to Earth expecting to learn about human culture, perhaps take some classes in literature or history. Physical education hadn't even been on his radar. And yet, here he was, about to embark on what promised to be the most physically demanding experience of his life. As the first rays of sunlight began to peek through the windows, a loud, blaring noise suddenly filled the air. Zaxlor jumped, his scales changing color rapidly in alarm. "Rise and shine." Mike's cheerful voice cut through the noise. "That's the wake-up call. Time to grab some breakfast and get ready for gym class." Zaxlor groaned internally. It was going to be a long semester. The first class. The alien exchange students gathered nervously outside the imposing structure that was Galactic High's gymnasium. The building seemed to loom over them, its sleek design somehow managing to convey both modernity and an air of impending doom. Zaxlor's four hands fidgeted with the edges of his new gym uniform, a curious garment that felt both too tight and too loose in all the wrong places. Beside him, Krillix was doing her best to keep her wings tucked in, the Earth's gravity making them feel unusually heavy. Gloop had perhaps the strangest appearance, having been poured into what could only be described as a sentient blob-shaped sweatsuit. Senthu, meanwhile, simply stood there, their crystalline form refracting the morning sunlight and casting tiny rainbows on their fellow students. "I don't understand," Senthu chimed softly. "Why do we need special garments for learning?" Before anyone could answer, the gym doors burst open with a resounding bang. Coach Briggs strode out, her presence somehow even more intimidating than it had been the day before. She was dressed in a tracksuit that seemed to emphasize every rippling muscle, a whistle dangling around her neck like some sort of primitive weapon. "Good morning, space cadets," she boomed, her voice echoing across the quad. "Ready for your first taste of Earth PE?" A chorus of uncertain mumbles was the only response. "I can't hear you," Briggs shouted, her grin widening. "I said, are you ready?" "Yes, Coach Briggs," the aliens replied in unison, more out of fear than enthusiasm. "That's more like it. Now let's start with a little warm-up. 5 laps around the track. Move it." As the alien students stumbled towards the running track, they couldn't help but notice the human students already there, effortlessly jogging and sprinting as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Zaxlor tried to coordinate his 4 legs into something resembling a run, while Krillix fluttered along, half running, half flying in the unfamiliar gravity. Gloop sort of oozed forward, at a slightly faster pace than usual. Senthu, with no legs to speak of, simply glided along, their crystalline base making a curious scraping sound against the track. By the time they had completed their 5 laps, or in Gloop's case, 3.5, the alien students were in various states of distress. Zaxlor's scales had taken on a worrying grayish hue, Krillix was panting heavily, her feathers in disarray, and even Senthu's usually brilliant surface seemed somewhat dulled. "Excellent warm-up, folks," Coach Briggs called out, seemingly oblivious to their suffering. "Now let's move on to some basic calisthenics." What followed was a blur of jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, and various other exercises that seemed designed specifically to target muscle groups the aliens didn't even know they had. Gloop, in particular, found the concept of sit-ups to be especially challenging, given his lack of a defined up or down. As they struggled through the exercises, Zaxlor couldn't help but notice how effortlessly the human students were performing the same routines. It was as if they were made for this kind of physical exertion, which he realized with a start. They probably were. "Earth really is a death world," he muttered to Krillix between gasping breaths. "I think I'm dying." Krillix wheezed back, her wings drooping. Just when they thought it couldn't get any worse, Coach Briggs blew her whistle, the shrill sound cutting through their pain-induced haze. All right, Space Cadets. Time for the real fun to begin. Today we're going to learn about a little Earth game called Dodgeball. A collective groan rose from the alien students, while the humans let out a cheer. Now the rules are simple, Briggs continued, hefting a red rubber ball in one hand. You throw these balls at each other. If you get hit, you're out. If you catch a ball thrown at you, the thrower is out. Last team standing wins. Gloop raised a pseudopod tentatively. Query: is participation mandatory? Briggs' grin turned predatory. Oh, it's not just mandatory, it's essential to your Earth education. Now, divide into teams. Aliens versus humans. Let's see what you're made of. As they took their positions on opposite sides of the gym, Zaxlor couldn't shake the feeling that they were lambs being led to slaughter. The human students were practically bouncing with excitement, their eyes gleaming with an almost feral intensity. Remember, Senthu chimed nervously, this is just a game. They wouldn't actually try to hurt us, right? The whistle blew and chaos erupted. Rubber balls flew through the air with astonishing speed and accuracy. The alien team scattered, each trying to avoid the onslaught in their own unique way. Zaxlor used his 4 arms to frantically swat away incoming projectiles, while Krillix took to the air, using her wings to dodge and weave. Gloop's strategy was perhaps the most effective. He simply allowed the balls to pass through his gelatinous form, although each impact left him wobbling precariously. Senthu, to everyone's surprise, turned out to be a natural, their crystalline body deflecting balls with ease. But despite their best efforts, the aliens were clearly outmatched. One by one. The first class continued. But despite their best efforts, the aliens were clearly outmatched. One by one, they fell victim to the onslaught of rubber projectiles. Krillix was the first to go, a well-aimed throw catching her mid-flight and sending her spiraling to the ground in a flurry of feathers. Zaxlor lasted longer, his multiple arms providing a decent defense, but eventually, a crafty human student faked him out, and he took a ball straight to his midsection. Gloop's immunity to direct hits proved to be his downfall. While the balls passed harmlessly through him, the constant impacts eventually caused him to lose cohesion, spreading into a thin puddle on the gym floor. Coach Briggs ruled him out on account of no longer having a definable shape to hit. In the end, it came down to Xenthu, the crystalline being stood alone against a team of grinning, ball-wielding humans. To everyone's surprise, Xenthu had not only survived, but had managed to catch several balls, eliminating some of the human players. Well, Coach Briggs called out, genuine admiration in her voice. Looks like we've got a natural. Show us what you've got, Sparkles. Emboldened by the coach's words, Senthu's crystalline surface seemed to glow brighter. With a series of quick, precise movements, they began to dodge and weave, their faceted body refracting the gym's lights and momentarily disorienting their opponents. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like Senthu might actually turn the tide. They caught another ball, then another, each catch accompanied by a musical chime and eliminating another human player. The alien students, nursing their bruises on the sidelines, began to cheer. But in the end, the humans' superior numbers and experience prevailed. In a coordinated assault, they launched a volley of balls from all directions. Senthu, magnificent as they were, couldn't dodge them all. With a resounding clink, they were struck multiple times, sending them spinning across the gym floor. And that's game. Coach Briggs announced, blowing her whistle. Excellent effort, everyone. Especially you, Senthu. I think we found our dodgeball MVP. As the alien students gathered themselves, nursing various bruises, aches, and in Gloop's case, helping him reform into a more cohesive shape, Coach Briggs approached them. Not bad for your first day, Space Cadets, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. I know it seems tough now, but trust me, you'll get better, stronger, faster. That's what Earth PE is all about, pushing your limits and discovering what you're really capable of. Zaxlor, still trying to catch his breath, looked up at her. But Coach, he wheezed, we're not built like humans. Our bodies aren't made for this kind of intensity. Briggs' smile softened slightly. That's where you're wrong, kiddo. Every species has the capacity to adapt, to evolve. Your bodies might be different, but the principle is the same. Challenge yourself, push beyond what you think you can do, and you'll be amazed at the results. She looked at each of them in turn. Zaxlor, those 4 arms of yours could make you an unstoppable force on the court. Krillix, once you build up some muscle, your ability to fly will give you an incredible advantage. Gloop, your malleable form opens up possibilities most athletes can only dream of. And Xenthu, well, you've already shown us what you can do. The alien students exchanged glances, a mix of skepticism and cautious hope in their expressions. Now, Briggs continued, her grin returning full force. Who's ready for some weightlifting? A collective groan rose from the group, but this time it was tinged with something new, a spark of determination. As they followed Coach Briggs to the weight room, each of them felt a subtle shift in their perspective. Maybe, just maybe, they could do this after all. The rest of the class passed in a blur of barbells, dumbbells, and exercise machines that looked more like torture devices to the alien students. Zaxlor discovered that his 4 arms did indeed give him an advantage in certain lifts, although coordinating them proved to be a challenge. Krillix found that the leg press machine helped her build strength to counteract Earth's gravity. Gloop, to everyone's surprise, excelled at resistance band exercises, his amorphous form allowing him to generate tension in unique ways. Xenthu, however, faced a unique challenge. Their crystalline body, while durable, wasn't suited for traditional weightlifting. Coach Briggs, showing a flash of the creativity that made her such an effective teacher, devised a series of isometric exercises that allowed Xenthu to stress and strengthen their crystalline structure. As the class wound down and the students headed for the showers, another novel experience for some of the aliens, there was a palpable sense of accomplishment in the air. They were exhausted, sore, and in some cases, slightly misshapen, but they had survived their first Earth PE class. Remember, Space Cadets, Coach Briggs called out as they left the gym, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, we start with endurance training. The alien students hobbled back to their dorms, equal parts terrified and intrigued by what the next day would bring. As they parted ways in the dormitory lobby, Zaxlor turned to his fellow exchange students. You know, he said, wincing as he stretched his aching arms, I think I'm starting to understand why humans are considered one of the toughest species in the galaxy. Krillix nodded, her feathers still ruffled from the day's exertions. If this is what they consider basic physical education, I shudder to think what their military training must be like. Gloop, who had finally managed to assume a roughly humanoid shape, burbled in agreement. Analysis. Humans possess a remarkable capacity for self-improvement through voluntary suffering. Fascinating, if somewhat masochistic. Xenthu's crystalline surface sparkled with what might have been excitement. I must admit, I find this approach to education invigorating. Perhaps there is more to physical exertion than I had previously calculated. As they said their goodnights and headed to their respective rooms, each of them felt a curious mix of dread and anticipation for what the semester would bring. Little did they know, their journey of discovery, both of human resilience and their own hidden strengths, was only just beginning. Adapting to adversity. As the weeks passed, the alien students found themselves settling into a routine that was as grueling as it was transformative. Each day brought new challenges, new aches, and surprisingly, new triumphs. Zaxlor stood in front of the mirror in his dorm room, flexing his 4 arms experimentally. To his amazement, he could see definition in muscles he didn't even know he had a month ago. His roommate, Mike, watched with approval. Dude, you're getting ripped, Mike exclaimed. Those extra arms are going to make you a beast in the rock climbing unit next week." Zaxlor's scales rippled with a mix of pride and trepidation. "Rock climbing? You mean we'll be scaling actual Earth mountains?" Mike laughed. "Nah, man, we're starting with the indoor climbing wall. But who knows? By the end of the semester, Coach Briggs might have us tackling Everest." Across the hall, Krillix was having her own moment of realization. As she preened her feathers, she noticed that her wings felt stronger, more responsive. The constant battle against Earth's gravity had been tough, but she was adapting. She could fly for longer periods now, and her landings were becoming more graceful. Her roommate, Sarah, poked her head into the room. "Hey, bird girl, ready for swimming class today?" Krillix squawked in surprise. "Swimming? But I'm avian. We don't swim." Sarah grinned. "Trust me, if Coach Briggs can teach Gloop to do a butterfly stroke, she can teach you to swim. Besides, it's great for building overall strength and endurance." Meanwhile, in the common room, Gloop was demonstrating his newfound flexibility to a group of fascinated human students. His amorphous body stretched and contorted in ways that defied physics, a result of weeks of yoga and Pilates classes. Observation. The concept of core strength is particularly intriguing when one's entire being is essentially a core, Gloop burbled, forming himself into a perfect wheel pose. Senthu, who had been quietly observing, chimed in. "Indeed, the human emphasis on holistic physical development is most enlightening. I have found that regular exercise has increased the resonance frequency of my crystalline structure by 7.3%. The human students exchanged glances, not entirely sure what that meant, but impressed nonetheless. As they made their way to the gym for another day of training, the alien students found themselves discussing their progress. "You know," Zaxlor said, his forearms swinging in perfect rhythm as he walked, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually starting to enjoy these classes." Krillix nodded, her feathers ruffling in agreement. "It's strange, isn't it? A month ago, I could barely fly in this gravity. Now, I'm looking forward to seeing how high I can soar in today's vertical jump tests." Gloop, who was rolling along beside them, formed a pseudopod into a thumbs-up shape. "Affirmative. The constant physical challenges have improved my molecular cohesion significantly. I haven't accidentally left part of myself behind in days." Senthu's crystalline surface sparkled with what could only be described as excitement. "I concur. The human approach to physical education is fascinatingly comprehensive. Did you know they have an entire unit dedicated to hand-eye coordination?" As they entered the gym, they were greeted by the now familiar sight of Coach Briggs, her ever-present whistle dangling around her neck. But today there was something different about her expression. She looked proud. "All right, space cadets," she called out, her voice echoing through the gymnasium. "Today's a special day. We're going to see just how far you've come since you first stepped foot on Earth." The alien students exchanged nervous glances. A test. They hadn't prepared for a test. "Don't look so worried," Briggs continued, her grin widening. "This isn't about pass or fail. It's about pushing your limits and seeing what you're truly capable of. We're going to revisit some of the exercises from your first week, and I think you'll be surprised by how much you've improved." And so began a day of intense physical challenges. They started with the dreaded laps around the track. But this time, something was different. Zaxlor found that his forelegs moved in perfect coordination, eating up the distance with a speed that surprised even him. Krillix, instead of awkwardly fluttering along the ground, soared overhead, her wings cutting through the air with newfound strength. Gloop, who had once struggled to make it around the track at all, now rolled along at a surprisingly brisk pace, his gelatinous form undulating with purpose. Even Senthu, who had initially scraped along at a glacial pace, now glided smoothly, their crystalline base having developed a curious locomotion that propelled them forward with unexpected speed. Next came strength tests. Zaxlor, to his amazement, found he could now bench press weights that would have been impossible for him just a month ago. Krillix discovered that her improved wing strength translated to impressive performance on the lat pull-down machine. Gloop, in a display that left even Coach Briggs speechless, managed to engulf an entire set of free weights and lift them by manipulating his own surface tension. Senthu, whose unique physiology had initially posed a challenge, showed remarkable improvement in their custom exercises. They demonstrated an ability to alter their crystalline structure in response to various stresses, a skill that Coach Briggs noted could have fascinating applications in more advanced training. But the true test came when Coach Briggs announced the final challenge of the day, a repeat of their first dodgeball game. "All right, folks," she said, tossing a red rubber ball from hand to hand. "Aliens versus humans, just like day one. Let's see how much you've learned." As they took their positions on the court, the alien students felt a curious mix of nervousness and excitement. They remembered all too well the brutal defeat they had suffered in their first match. But they were different now. Stronger, faster, more coordinated. The whistle blew, and the game began. This time, it was the human students who found themselves on the defensive. Zaxlor moved with lightning speed, his forearms a blur as he caught and threw balls with pinpoint accuracy. Krillix took to the air, diving and swooping to avoid incoming projectiles while raining down throws from above. Gloop, in a strategy that can only be described as creative, formed himself into a series of impossible shapes, making himself an extremely difficult target to hit. When he did get possession of a ball, he would launch it with surprising force by rapidly compressing and expanding his gelatinous form. Senthu, building on their natural talent from the first game, had developed into a dodgeball powerhouse. Their crystalline body refracted light in disorienting patterns, making it hard for opponents to track their movements. When they threw a ball, it would spin in unpredictable ways, curving and dipping around defenders. The human students, caught off guard by the aliens' dramatic improvement, found themselves being eliminated one by one. The tide of the game had turned completely. In the end, it came down to a final showdown. On the human side, only Mike remained, his athletic prowess having carried him through the match. On the alien side, all 4 exchange students were still in play, a testament to how far they had come. Mike looked at his opponents, a grin spreading across his face. Well, he said, hefting a ball in his hand. "Looks like Coach Briggs' training paid off. But don't think I'm going down without a fight." What followed was a dodgeball battle for the ages. Mike moved with the skill and agility of a seasoned player, ducking, dodging, and returning fire with impressive accuracy. But against the combined might of the 4 alien students, even his talents were eventually overwhelmed. The final out came as a joint effort. Zaxlor and Krillix launched a coordinated attack, forcing Mike to dodge right into the path of a spinning throw from Senthu. As the ball made contact, Gloop formed a net-like shape behind Mike, catching him as he stumbled back and ensuring there was no dispute about the hit. As Mike's back made contact with Gloop's gelatinous form, Coach Briggs' whistle pierced the air. "Game over," she shouted, her voice filled with unmistakable pride. "Victory goes to the alien team." The gym erupted in cheers, with both human and alien students celebrating the incredible match they had just witnessed. As the alien exchange students gathered together, breathless but exhilarated, they realized just how far they had come. Coach Briggs approached them, slow applause emphasizing her words. "Now that," she said, "is what I call progress. You've taken everything Earth has thrown at you and not only survived but thrived. I couldn't be prouder." Zaxlor, his scales shimmering with a mix of exertion and emotion, spoke for the group. "Thank you, Coach. We couldn't have done it without your guidance and your relentless training regimen." Briggs laughed, a booming sound that filled the gym. "Oh, we're just getting started, space cadets. Just wait until you see what I have planned for the second half of the semester." As they left the gym that day, the alien students felt a newfound confidence. They had faced the challenges of Earth's physical education and come out stronger. But more than that, they had discovered reserves of strength, adaptability, and determination they never knew they possessed. Little did they know, their greatest challenge and their greatest opportunity to showcase their newfound abilities was yet to come. The big game. As the semester progressed, the alien exchange students found themselves not just adapting to Earth's physical demands, but excelling. Their unique physiologies, once a hindrance, had become their greatest assets under Coach Briggs' innovative training regimens. It was during one particularly grueling afternoon of circuit training that Coach Briggs made an announcement that would change everything. "Listen up, space cadets," she called out, her voice cutting through the sounds of exertion filling the gym. "I've got some exciting news. Galactic High has been invited to participate in the Inter-School Cenophysical Olympics." A murmur of excitement rippled through the human students, while the aliens exchanged confused glances. Zaxlor, now comfortable enough to speak up in class, raised one of his 4 hands. "Excuse me, Coach, but what exactly are the Cenophysical Olympics?" Briggs' grin widened. "It's a new initiative, part of the broader cultural exchange program. Schools from all over Earth with alien exchange students will be competing in a series of events designed to showcase the unique abilities of different species, and I've decided that you 4 will be representing Galactic High." The alien students stood in stunned silence for a moment, processing this information. They had come so far from their first day on Earth, but competing against other schools. That was a whole new level of challenge. Krillix was the first to break the silence, her feathers ruffling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "But Coach, are we really ready for something like that?" "Ready," Briggs laughed. "Kid, you've been ready. You just didn't know it yet. This is your chance to show the world, heck, the galaxy, what you're made of." Over the next few weeks, training kicked into high gear. Coach Briggs designed specialized routines for each of the alien students, honing their unique abilities to a razor's edge. Zaxlor found himself mastering complex gymnastic routines that took full advantage of his 4 arms and incredible flexibility. Krillix's training focused on aerial maneuvers, pushing the limits of her flight capabilities in Earth's gravity. Gloop's sessions were perhaps the most unusual, involving rapid shape-shifting exercises and precision fluid dynamics. Senthu, whose crystalline physiology had initially been the most challenging to work with, was now excelling in events that required precise control over their molecular structure. They had developed the ability to alter their density and refract light in ways that were both beautiful and strategically advantageous. As the day of the competition drew near, excitement built throughout Galactic High. Posters appeared in the hallways, cheering on the Galactic Gladiators, the nickname that had been bestowed upon the alien team. Even the human students who had initially been skeptical of their extraterrestrial classmates were now fully supportive, offering encouragement and help with training. Finally, the big day arrived. The alien students found themselves on a bus heading to the host school, a sprawling campus on the outskirts of New Houston that had been specially designed for interspecies education. As they disembarked, they were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. The campus was alive with activity, filled with alien species from across the galaxy. There were tall, willowy beings that seemed to float rather than walk, squat, heavily muscled creatures that looked like they could bend steel with their bare hands or equivalent appendages, and everything in between. "Wow," Zaxlor breathed, his 4 eyes wide with wonder. "I've never seen so many different species in one place before." Gloop, who had been nervously maintaining a humanoid shape, relaxed into a more natural blob form. Observation: the diversity of life forms present is truly remarkable. Query: are we certain this level of interspecies cooperation is typical for Earth? Coach Briggs, overhearing this, chuckled. "It's a new frontier for us too, Gloop. But that's what Earth is all about, pushing boundaries and bringing people, beings, together." As they made their way to the registration area, they passed by other teams warming up. The competition looked fierce. There was a group of Methan brothers doing what appeared to be anti-gravity yoga, and a team of silicon-based life forms engaging in some kind of crystalline competition that Sen-Thu watched with particular interest. "Remember," Coach Briggs said as they reached the check-in desk, "you've trained hard for this. You're not just representing Galactic High. You're representing Earth. Show them what you've learned about human determination and spirit." The opening ceremony was a spectacle unlike anything the alien students had ever seen. The stadium was packed with spectators from across the galaxy, and the parade of athletes showcased a dizzying array of life forms. As the Galactic High team entered, led by Zaxlor, carrying a flag bearing the school's emblem, the crowd erupted in cheers. Then the games began in earnest. Zaxlor was up first, competing in the multi-line coordination challenge. The event involved navigating a complex obstacle course while simultaneously solving puzzles with each hand. His months of training paid off as he seamlessly coordinated his four arms, swinging, climbing, and problem-solving, with a grace that left the audience in awe. Next came Krillix's event, the Aerial Agility Trial. The course was a three-dimensional maze of hoops, barriers, and moving obstacles suspended in the air. Krillix took to the skies with confidence, her wings cutting through the air with precision as she darted and swooped through the course. The strength she had built up battling Earth's gravity gave her an edge, allowing her to pull off maneuvers that left even her avian competitors impressed. Gloop's event, the Amorphous Adaptability Challenge, was perhaps the most unusual of the competition. It involved rapidly changing shape to solve a series of physical puzzles, from fitting through oddly shaped openings to forming simple tools. Gloop's time training with Coach Briggs had honed his shape-shifting abilities to an art form, and he oozed through the course with a speed and precision that had the crowd buzzing. Finally, it was Sen-Thu's turn. Their event, the Crystalline Refraction Relay, was a test of speed, precision, and control over their molecular structure. Sen-Thu had to alter their form to refract laser beams through a complex series of targets, all while racing against the clock. Their performance was nothing short of dazzling, their crystalline bodies shimmering and shifting in a mesmerizing display of light and form. As the events progressed, it became clear that Galactic High was a serious contender. The alien students, once struggling just to keep up in gym class, were now at the forefront of interstellar athletic competition. But it wasn't just their physical abilities that stood out. It was the way they supported each other, the teamwork and camaraderie they had developed over their months on Earth. Between events, they could be seen cheering each other on, offering encouragement and strategic advice. This spirit of cooperation reached its peak in the final event of the Games, the Xenophysical Relay. This grueling challenge required all four team members to work together, each using their unique abilities to overcome a series of obstacles. As they took their positions at the starting line, Coach Briggs gave them one final pep talk. "All right, space cadets," she said, her voice filled with pride. "This is what we've been working towards. Remember everything you've learned, not just about physical training, but about working together. You're not just four individuals anymore. You're a team. Now get out there and show the galaxy what Earth PE is all about." The starting gun fired, and the galactic gladiators leaped into action. Zaxlor led the charge, his four arms working in perfect harmony to scale a towering wall. At the top, he linked arms with Krillix, who took to the air, carrying him across a chasm too wide to jump. They landed next to Gloop, who had formed himself into a perfect sphere. Zaxlor and Krillix worked together to launch Gloop down a steep, twisting slide, his malleable form allowing him to pick up incredible speed. At the bottom, Gloop reformed into a catapult, launching Sen-Thu high into the air. Sen-Thu's crystalline body sparkled as they soared, refracting the stadium lights in a dazzling display. They landed precisely on a series of small platforms, each one lighting up as their precisely calibrated density triggered hidden sensors. As Sen-Thu hit the final platform, a burst of music filled the stadium. The Galactic Gladiators had completed the course in record time, their seamless teamwork and unique abilities combining to create a performance unlike anything the games had ever seen. The crowd erupted in cheers as the team reunited at the finish line, embracing in a group hug that looked rather odd given their vastly different physiologies, but felt perfectly natural to them. As they stood on the podium later, gold medals gleaming against their varied forms, the alien students felt a swell of pride unlike anything they had experienced before. They had come to Earth as outsiders, struggling to adapt to its harsh conditions. Now they stood as champions, having not only survived the challenge of Earth's physical education, but thrived in it. Coach Briggs stood off to the side, watching her team with unmistakable pride. She had pushed them hard, but she had also believed in them, seen potential where others might have seen only limitations. As the Galactic High alma mater played and their school flag was raised, Zaxlor turned to his teammates, his scales shimmering with emotion. "You know," he said, his voice barely audible over the cheering crowd, "I think I finally understand what Coach Briggs meant about the human spirit. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about never giving up, always pushing to be better, and working together to overcome any obstacle." The others nodded in agreement, each reflecting on how far they had come. As they left the podium, ready to celebrate their victory, they knew that their journey was far from over. They had learned so much, grown in ways they never thought possible, and they couldn't wait to see what challenges Earth would throw at them next. Little did they know, their greatest test, and their opportunity to truly showcase the human spirit they had embraced, was yet to come. Graduation day. The last few weeks of the semester flew by in a blur of activity. The Galactic Gladiators' victory at the Xenophysical Olympics had catapulted them to celebrity status, not just at Galactic High, but across the entire planet. They found themselves giving interviews to intergalactic news outlets, demonstrating their unique abilities for fascinated scientists, and even being asked to consult on the design of new multi-species athletic facilities. But through it all, they never lost sight of why they had come to Earth in the first place: to learn, to grow, and to bridge the gap between their species and humanity. As the final day of their exchange program dawned, the alien students gathered in the gym one last time. The space had been transformed, decorated with banners and streamers in a rainbow of colors that represented both Earth and their homeworlds. Coach Briggs stood at the center of the room, her usual whistle replaced by a small medallion, a replica of the gold medals the team had won. As the students filed in, taking their seats on the bleachers, she cleared her throat, her eyes suspiciously misty. "Well, space cadets," she began, her voice gruff with emotion. "We've come a long way since that first day, haven't we?" The alien students nodded, each lost in their own memories of their incredible journey. "When you first arrived," Briggs continued, "I saw a group of scared, out-of-shape kids who couldn't run a lap without collapsing. But you know what else I saw? Potential. And boy, did you ever live up to it." She paced back and forth, gesturing expansively. "You didn't just adapt to Earth's physical challenges, you excelled. You took everything this death world could throw at you and came back stronger. But more than that, you embodied the very spirit of what physical education is all about." Briggs stopped, looking each of them in the eye. "It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about pushing your limits, working together, and never, ever giving up. And in doing so, you've taught us humans a thing or two as well." She grinned, a familiar glint in her eye. "Like how having 4 arms doesn't necessarily make push-ups any easier, right, Zaxlor?" Zaxlor's scales rippled in what might have been the Arcturian equivalent of a blush. "I still maintain that was a design flaw in the exercise, Coach," he quipped, earning a round of laughter from his classmates. "Or how being able to literally turn yourself into a puddle doesn't get you out of swimming laps. Gloop." Briggs continued. Gloop burbled good-naturedly. Observation: the human concept of swimming is far more rigorous than initial data suggested. Briggs nodded, her smile softening. But jokes aside, you've all grown so much. Krillix, you came here barely able to fly in our gravity. Now look at you. I've seen Earth birds jealous of your aerial maneuvers. Krillix preened, her feathers puffing up with pride. It's all thanks to your training, Coach. Though I still think the flying through flaming hoops exercise was a bit excessive. And Xenthu, Briggs said, turning to the crystalline being, you've shown us all that strength comes in many forms. Your control over your molecular structure is nothing short of amazing. Xenthu's surface sparkled brightly, their equivalent of a beaming smile. The challenge was most illuminating, Coach Briggs. I have discovered facets of myself I never knew existed. Briggs nodded, then addressed the group as a whole. You came here to learn about Earth, about humans, but in the process, you've taught us just as much. You've shown us the incredible diversity of life in our galaxy, and how, despite our differences, we can come together, learn from each other, and achieve amazing things. She paused, taking a deep breath. And that's why I'm both sad and proud to present you with these. She held up a stack of certificates. Your Earth Physical Education diplomas. You've more than earned them. One by one, the alien students came forward to receive their diplomas, each one customized to reflect their unique achievements. As they returned to their seats, clutching the certificates, there wasn't a dry eye, or equivalent sensory organ, in the house. But Coach Briggs wasn't done yet. Now, I know you're all set to head back to your home world soon. But before you go, I have one last surprise for you. She gestured to the gym doors, which swung open to reveal a group of important-looking humans in suits, accompanied by several alien dignitaries. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations, Briggs announced, I present to you the board of the Intergalactic Olympic Committee. They have a special announcement to make. One of the humans stepped forward, a warm smile on his face. After witnessing your incredible performance at the Xenophysical Olympics and hearing about your journey here at Galactic High, we've come to a decision. We would like to formally invite Earth to host the first ever Intergalactic Olympics, with you four as our official ambassadors and torchbearers. The gym erupted in cheers and applause. The alien students looked at each other in shock and delight, barely able to process this incredible honor. As the excitement died down, Zaxlor stood up, his forearms raised for attention. Coach Briggs, fellow students, honored guests, he began, his voice steady despite his obvious emotion. On behalf of my fellow exchange students, I want to say thank you. When we came to Earth, we thought we were in for a semester of academic study. Instead, we found ourselves on the most challenging, rewarding, and transformative journey of our lives. He looked at his fellow aliens, who nodded encouragingly. We've learned so much about Earth, about humans, and about ourselves. We've discovered strengths we never knew we had, pushed ourselves further than we ever thought possible, and found friendship across the boundaries of species and worlds. Zaxlor's scales shimmered with pride. But most of all, we've learned what it truly means to have the human spirit. It's not about where you're from or what you look like. It's about determination, adaptability, and the willingness to face any challenge head-on. It's about lifting each other up and working together towards a common goal. He turned to Coach Briggs, all four of his eyes glistening. Coach, you didn't just teach us how to exercise. You taught us how to excel, how to persevere, and how to believe in ourselves. We came here as aliens, but we leave as honorary Earthlings, proud to carry the lessons we've learned here out into the galaxy. As Zaxlor finished speaking, the gym filled with applause once more. Coach Briggs, in a rare display of emotion, pulled all four alien students into a group hug, not caring about the logistical challenges of embracing a four-armed insectoid, a winged avian, a gelatinous blob, and a crystalline being all at once. The celebration continued long into the night, with humans and aliens alike sharing stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. As the exchange students prepared to leave Earth the next day, They knew they were taking with them far more than they had arrived with, not just physical strength and athletic skills, but a new understanding of what it meant to be part of a larger intergalactic community. And as their ship lifted off, carrying them back to their home worlds, they looked down at the blue and green planet that had challenged them, changed them, and ultimately embraced them. They knew that wherever their journeys took them next, a part of them would always belong to Earth and to the indomitable spirit they had discovered there. In the years to come, as they helped organize the Intergalactic Olympics and continued to bridge the gap between Earth and the rest of the galaxy, they would often think back to those grueling days in Coach Briggs' gym class, and they would smile, knowing that sometimes the toughest challenges bring the greatest rewards. For Zaxlor, Krillix, Gloop, and Senthu, Earth's basic gym class had been the beginning of an extraordinary adventure, one that would ripple out across the stars, bringing worlds together in ways no one could have imagined. And it all started with a whistle blow and Coach Briggs' booming voice. "All right, space cadets, let's see what you're made of." The end.